So today what we want to do right now is we want to move, and Travis is going to drive most of the conversation on the first part of this. We're going to break you down into groups, and then we're going to kind of give you some content, and then give you that content, give you a chance to kind of talk about that content. And so what we want to do is we want to talk about 5 things that, as Travis and I have talked to people in student ministry and are trying to bridge their churches, these are 5 things that everybody stinks at, struggles with, has questions, is trying to navigate. And so we're going to bring up those 5 things. Travis is going to kind of talk about the heart of them. And then what we're going to ask you to do is in your group, you're going to talk about it for a few minutes and come up with one solution. Everybody say one. One. Okay, you're going to go with one solution. We will go to your group and we will ask you to say, what is the one thing your group thinks we can do collectively to bridge and solve this? And when I ask you to say that one thing, you'll say how many things? One thing. You're not going to say we had 4 good ideas, we had 6 good ideas, we had 2 good ideas. You're going to pick one. The way this works in my house is we play the favorite game around the dinner table. And we go around and we say, what's your favorite car? And everybody say their favorite car. And sometimes one of my kids or my wife will say, I have 2. And I'll say, no, you don't understand the word favorite. Favorite means one. You pick one. We are playing the favorite game. One answer, okay? So you're going to have one answer that you're going to tell us. And then what we're going to do is we've thought through some of this stuff, and we're going to speak and say, this is one thing we think you can do. To each of those 5 things. We're going to work through that, then we're going to come back, everybody together, and then I'm going to depress all of us, and I'm going to talk about 5 things that we've got to figure out how to address if we're going to bridge our churches to the future. And I told you this morning, I'm going to write these up there, say a few things about them, and then I'm going to drop the mic, peace out, and leave, and we'll all have to figure them out. Because they're hard and challenging, but they are things that we're all facing if we're going to bridge to the next generation. So here's what I want you to do right now, and then Travis, once you're in place, he'll start facilitating this. I want you to go get in a group, 3 to 5, not with people from your church. Not with people from your church. 3 to 5 people, not with people from your church. When it looks like you're settled, Travis will start talking.
As you heard us talk about this morning, at our church we have a decentralized student ministry, and whether you have a small student ministry, a large student ministry, it's decentralized. It's you're a youth pastor, or you have a youth pastor, and the show revolves around him. These are going to be 5 things that we kind of all struggle with from time to time. Regardless of the size of your church, regardless of the philosophy, these are things that we all struggle with. And so, as Keith said, we kind of did some research. We looked at our own student ministry. We talked to some other churches, and we said, what are some things that are really, that we're all struggling with together? And so, the first thing that was on the top of our list, and many other churches' list, is volunteers. So, we struggle to get volunteers. We struggle to maintain volunteers. We have volunteers that start and they say yes to something, and then they come back and they don't show up at events, or they're flaky, or whatever. You might have great volunteers, but you're always going to struggle with some volunteers who you think are on the bus, and then they're not really on the bus. And so I like to just to give you a quick little just to help kind of create the tension a little bit. So I've known youth pastors, and you probably know some over the years, who are maybe they're 50 years old, but they like to act like a 21-year-old. Or maybe they're a 23-year-old and they don't have all the life wisdom in the world, but they like to pretend that they have all the life wisdom in the world. So that's another tension too, of trying to find. So for us, before you guys get started, I like to break down basically a stage of life for a youth pastor to a big brother stage, a cool uncle stage, and then a mom and dad stage too. But a lot of times, even some of the tension is we don't know our place or what season that we are even in, so we could even get that part wrong, and our volunteers can get those kind of things wrong. So when it comes to volunteers, sometimes we don't know where they are, where to put them, what age group of people to put them with. We don't know if they're gonna stay with your ministry or not. Are they gonna be faithful? Those are some real tensions. We even have issues with volunteers sometimes that will put things out on social media, and you go, kids look at your Instagram. You know what I mean? So how do you manage volunteers? How do you keep them committed to what you're doing? How do you continue to infuse vision in them and keep them on the team and healthy spiritually? That's the tension, and what we're going to do is we're going to give you about 5 or 6 minutes to talk about how you would manage volunteers, how you would recruit them, how you would bring them on the team, how you would help shepherd them, because they are the fruit of your ministry, and they're going to help guide the next generation. Does that make sense?
And as you do that, filter it through this grid, because it's easy to sort of generically go high and think about volunteers. But think about the answer that I'm trying to come up with is going to help me bridge to the next generation. So not just I'm going to create a volunteer handbook. Maybe the volunteer handbook, the reason it would be matter is because you're going to create a volunteer handbook that has high level, clear accountability because the volunteers you're having right now to reach the next generation need higher accountability. But don't just talk about volunteerism in general. Talk about it through the grid of, if we get this right, it's going to make us a better youth group within volunteer frustration to reach the next generation. Does that make sense, adding that to it? So take that filter, have the conversations, we'll give you some minutes, and then you're going to come up with how many ideas? One idea, all right? Grab a secretary in your group. When we go to your group, you're going to just say out loud your idea.
5 or 6 minutes, ready to go. We'll go counterclockwise. We'll start with you guys right here. You got to project. So you'll give us your one idea.
All right. So our thing was how do we train our youth volunteers, and the phrase we came up with was required unapologetic small group training for youth volunteers. We're not going to let them lead our youth, invest in our youth, unless they are committed enough to go through the training.
Some form of mandatory training.
Yes.
And I think that's so crucial for the next generation because, let's just be honest, the disciples that we are oftentimes producing that we're asking to minister to the next generation is often not very mature themselves. So if we're going to produce higher disciples, we have to have a higher bar for leadership. So I think that's very mandatory.
All right, this group right here.
So we said this idea of celebrate. So when we looked at volunteer frustration, we started looking at all these different things, like, okay, frustrating with recruiting or accountability or retaining, whatever. This idea of celebrating, and you can hit on all those things through, we have a mentality that we're going to celebrate our volunteers, but we're going to intentionally speak about those things through celebrating, right? So you can think about a handbook. I can tell you what to do and what not to do, but if I celebrate what you're supposed to do,
sure,
that's going to impact people more. Right?
Yeah, that's really good.
So I've heard people say, the Porter will phrase it, we replicate what we celebrate.
Yeah.
We replicate what we celebrate. So I think that's also important. This is going to sound terrible, but you know my heart on it, right? We are raising a generation where everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah.
So there's an insecure, I need to be valued, I need to be included, millennial generation kind of thing. And so I think the insecurity, they've seen this in corporate America. There has to be a way to value those people through celebration. So celebrate, replicate, we celebrate. Great.
Yep. How about Tyler's group right here?
We basically said you need to scout through your church as a whole and look for these people to begin with at a distance, and then as you have your team that's already formed, you can start to evaluate where they're at, and then, okay, we need to reach out to them, develop a personal relationship first before even considering, hey, do you want to come into our ministry and help out with that? Because if they feel like they have friends who are involved in the ministry, they're going to want to serve with their friends. So developing that personal relationship first, and then working on the areas where they didn't meet the evaluation.
Okay. So I hear reconnaissance, like really scouting out, does this person fit? Do they make sense? And then that reconnaissance gives you a platform to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair representation?
That sounds a lot better.
I think that again speaks to some of the DNA, next generation, how am I going to bridge? How does it make sense? So reconnaissance to build a platform. I can't spell reconnaissance, so I'll write recon.
Let's go to the group, the ladies right behind you guys.
Ours was kind of similar to theirs, with a little bit of a tweak, but just investing time to discover their specific gifts, and just like, I think if people understand that what they have, like that they have special gifts and value that God has given them to bring to the table, that they're just not replaceable, that they do have something to offer.
So recon to find the fit. Where are they unique to what your ministry needs? Okay? So we'll just sort of also say with this, and find the unique fit. Okay?
Yep. That's you guys directly behind them.
we talked about caring for our volunteers, and it kind of goes with the celebrating thing, but also, you know, caring for them on a spiritual level, and you know, that's where Satan's going to want to attack is those people who are serving even greater sometimes. So caring for their spiritual needs as well as celebrating them with, you know, hospitality and things that we can do that are very practical for the volunteers.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that one is a lot of times our frustration comes out of what they're not doing for us. We probably should ask ourselves the question, what are we not doing for them? And I think the caring for volunteers is important because it's, I heard Craig Rochelle one time say that he and his wife made a commitment that every night before they went to bed, at some point during the day, they would pray together. He says it's really hard to fight with the person you're praying with. I think it's hard to be resistant to a person you're trying to care for. So what I think happens when you actually care for your volunteers, it drives dialogue. It drives real relationship, which is good. So, and again, not to harp on it, I also think that helps play into the insecurity of next generation. You matter, you're important, we need you.
Yep, that's right. This group right here.
Yeah, we all agreed that the volunteers that you handpick are more likely to stick. And so it's never too early even to do that with even students that are in your ministries right now, the older students, to start fostering that in them so that when they are graduates and moved on, you already know where they're at, you already know that they're sticky, if they're going to connect with those students, and you can bring them in to do that as well.
Yeah, student ministry, at least for me, is weird. I like to handpick everybody. We have a process at our church for so that it's an easy on-ramp for our volunteers to be able to serve in an easy way. But man, when it comes to student ministry, you almost have to know how to handpick those guys because you can see talent in them. That's really, really important. Who's next? You guys, yeah.
Again, we kind of went back to the recon thing too, but one thing we said is we would look for, have conversations with people about people that had an influence when they were in youth group or a teenager. And so, because they kind of get it, right? You're not going to have to convince them, hey, this isn't just babysitting, you're actually having an impact, because they'll look back at their own life and say, yes, I had an adult that had an impact on me. So trying to kind of bridge that that way from their own experience.
Yeah, actually, I love that because we have quite a few of our students now who, from 25 all the way down to about 18, even here with us this week, who went through the student ministry on their own, saw value in it, and are now super passionate about giving back. And the interesting thing is when you get those students who have gone through it themselves, especially if they've gone through your program, they're probably on the younger side, so they're in the big brother category. So it's figured out a way to balance that out. That's really, really good. What about you guys over here?
We said outsourcing, just outsource the whole youth department.
Yeah.
Cancel it.
Yeah.
So just clarifying the vision so that people know. You can do that in training, but anybody ever had a meeting and clarified the vision, and then like 2 days later you're like, I thought we went over this,
Sure.
It's got to be continued.
Yeah. About hiding. Yes.
We talk about discipleship with specific intent of reproduction.
Okay. You want to say any more about that? Or I don't want to just write reproduction and be bad.
Yeah. Well, I think it would probably fit in some ways with the training aspect, but it's I wouldn't consider it just that. I would consider it's a spiritual, emotional investment into your leadership, which then would filter down to the teams with them, and then they would carry on as well.
So you're talking about, again, training for the health of those workers and volunteers.
Right. Well,
making sure they are healthy.
Yeah, well, it's a long-term projection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this it? Good, last one.
Yeah, so we also talked about the vision aspect and said basically we need to clearly communicate the role and expectation of the volunteers so they understand actually what impact they are having in the lives of the students.
Okay.
We say too, like, you got to be able to define your wins, because if they don't have a target to shoot at and know what they're going to win at and how they're going to be successful, then they don't always have a clear vision and know what they're doing. They've got to have those wins defined. which is really, really important. Those are all really, really amazing things, and I think we can all learn from each other. We're going to give you one quick solution. I'm just going to tell you one of the ways that I handle it. It's not always going to be a way that can work for everybody, but we think it's worked for us, and hopefully it will work for you. As far as when you're thinking of it through a filter of how do we bridge to the next generation, and how do you bridge from an older generation, a lot of I heard a big theme of what we're talking about was leader care, and making sure that our leaders are cared for, making sure that they're trained, making sure that they're not going through difficult situations themselves, and they're bottling a lot of things up. So one thing our church has started doing, one of the things our ministry has started doing, we started this last year, and it worked well, and we're kind of doing a 2.0 version of it this year. But all of our leaders, because we have quite a few leaders that we're dealing with, and all of our leaders need to be mentored themselves. And so one of the things that I do, this is just kind of a quick overview of how I do it. I divide from 9th to 12th grade, I put them in teams, team 9, team 10, team 11, team 12. And then I have team leaders who are more seasoned in their faith. Actually, 2 of them are here with me today. So Andy and Sandy in the back there, they're 2 of my team. Well, actually, Andy's over here somewhere. I don't even know. There he is. They're 2 of my team leaders. They're going to be overseeing 11th graders. And so what they're going to do, they're not going to deal with students at all. They're only overseeing the leaders who are leading 11th graders. And so it's their job now, and well, they don't know it's their job, but it will be this fall, but it's their job to check in with those people, to get around a circle with them and listen to their problems and listen to what their issues are, to mentor them, to talk to them, and I've seen these guys do that this week. They've done a phenomenal job of just checking in with people, sending text messages, once a week, praying with these people. If there's an issue, if they need to meet for coffee, they need to be developing these leaders because there's too many for some of us. And so when it comes to your church, you may not have a whole ton of leaders. Maybe you have 5. Well, that's okay, because what you could do is you could say, I'm going to require all 5 of my volunteers, or however many you have, to go find a mentor or someone who's going to be discipling you. Because that person who is old, so you've got a 23-year-old leader, and they know how to connect with students, that 23-year-old leader needs to go find a 48-year-old leader for themselves. And that person needs to be giving back. If you've got a church with quite a few more, then you need to set up some sort of an org chart where you can have someone who is older and more seasoned in their faith to oversee your group of leaders. That's our solution, and we think that's going to work.
And let me help connect that too with this. I'm just going to star the ones Travis has given you, but think about it this way. So let's say you have high school students that are 15 to 18, and then you have a bunch of workers that are 22 to 29. Here's what the 22 to 29-year-old has that's going to have the 15 to 18-year-old want to listen to them. Relevance, some level of coolness, style, appeal, probably coming out of a similar stage of life not that long ago. Person sees themselves in it. But you know what the 22 to 29-year-old doesn't have? They don't have life experience. Their character is lower oftentimes. They're more likely probably to make some stupid, sinful decisions themselves, etc., etc. Versus, I'm just going to put 29 plus to not be mean to anybody. Well, let's just call it the 29 plus group. They have all the things that I just said, but often what they don't have is the relevance, cool connection factor. So what you can do to bridge the gap is to have these people pouring into these people while these people are pouring into those people. Does that make sense? So what you're doing is you're having shepherds for the shepherds, and these shepherds are making sure, listen to me, that these shepherds don't become idiots. Because they can. Now they often have a great opportunity into the lives of those people that the 50-year-old doesn't. 50-year-old's my dad, not cool, irrelevant. There were too many golf shirts and cargo shorts. They don't want to hang out with them. But they've got a group of people right here that they do want to listen to, that they do vibe with, that wears the same style of jeans as them. But this person has a Twitter account. But this person is more likely to maybe sleep with their boyfriend. Right? I'm just being honest. So what do? We have to find a way to say, if we're going to bridge from the 29 plus to this person, let's have a shepherd for the shepherd. Is that making sense? So here's what I'm going to do. Just again, you don't have to. No one's going to hurt my feelings. I'll leave this up here for about 30, 40 more seconds. You want to take a picture of that, or if you wrote it all down, great. And then we'll just do the same exact exercise for the next 4. All right? Make sense? All right, we'll leave it up. Travis, go ahead and set the stage for the next one.
All right, so this one's huge. This one's really, really important. This is partnering with parents. All right, this is an issue for every church across the board. Your stomach probably sank a little bit when we said this. We say we absolutely want to, our church, we want to be a church that thinks orange. It's the light of the church and it's the heart of the family. And those two things together make orange. We want to be an orange church. We want to constantly partner with parents. But we like to divide parents out into 3 categories. Because parents are, we said this morning, we talked about parents being the disciples, the primary disciples. And that all makes sense when we've got a super, spiritual family. But the problem is, a lot of families today are either polarized, they're split families. A kid spending one weekend. We have this all the time. We have kids spending one weekend with the dad and one weekend with the mom. And we have kids who are in 2 different religions depending on what house that they're in. So it becomes really, really difficult when you have parents that are disengaged. And so we're trying to partner with these parents, but what do we do? We just to kind of set the stage a little bit, we've actually divided parents into 3 different categories. Red, yellow, and red, yellow, and green. A green would be a parent who is basically they work at the church, they're so involved. You got a yellow parent who maybe they're Christian, maybe they're not. They like the fact that the church does some really cool stuff for my kid and keeps them busy. And then you got a red parent who's we don't want anything to do with it. We're just glad our kid's not, involved in something horrible. But so when it comes to partnering with parents, we think it's absolutely essential because a parent spends some ridiculous number. It's 35,000 hours with a kid as opposed to the 80 hours that you spend a year with these kids. A lot of times the problem is we want to spend all of our time with the students and think that we can change their life in those 80 hours a year that we spend with them. But the parents are going to spend thousands and thousands of hours with them. So how do we bridge that gap between the parents? That's the tension we want to set up.
So again, think, how do we do it in a culture or in a church where we're trying to bridge and we're trying to partner with parents to bridge? Go, 5 minutes.
So the question is, parents, how do you partner with parents? What are your methods? How do we invest in those parents as far as the way that they invest in the next generation? We're gonna go the opposite direction this time. We're gonna start with you guys.
Maybe that's a problem we have to figure out a solution. But I think we all talk about some finding a way to connect with the parents face to face kind of time. Because it's a tool for us to reach out, creating some of this face-to-face.
Yeah. Good.
We're talking about the fact that meaningful communication, average time spent a week with parent-child is approximately 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And so knowing that, part of what we were discussing over here is to equip parents. And that's by building a relationship with them in an informal setting, offering formal setting, training time, but it's equipping parents. It's not just telling them have meaningful communication or invest in your kids or teach your kids.
Yeah.
It's showing them and modeling. Sure. Most of us learn by what we see. So modeling was also a big thought we had there.
Yeah, there are, obviously you have more and more parents that profess to be Christians who are less and less committed to the local church, and they're with their kids in these passive environments, but not meaningful environments. And so there's some incredible apps out there, actually. If you have little kids, there's an app called Parent Cue. Orange has created some other apps that drive conversations and equip the parents to actually a lot of parents are I'm not sure how to start this conversation. I'm not sure what to say about it. And there's some incredible apps, but I think you're right. But it's one thing to say, hey, move your conversations beyond a minute, 3 minutes and 25 seconds or whatever you said. It's another thing to say, how to do that. And then if the conversation turned into a 20-minute conversation, would they be able to handle it? And so I think it is vision, but I think it also is equipping. So that's good. I think you guys are Rob Street.
One thing that we've found that is helpful, we've offered formal settings, and parents that need that formal equipping time, they don't show up. And that's a frustration. But yet they want you to put up the fires.
Sure.
But the one thing that we found is that offering service projects for the parents to come along and help when we can get the kids don't want their parents there at youth group time, but they're a lot more apt to have a kid there on a mission trip for the weekend, or they have their parents there with them. And we found that that's a huge win when we can have a parent serving alongside their teenager for the weekend going to DC or whatever. There's huge ramifications or huge momentum.
Good.
Go ahead. I thought you.
We talked about also the need for that face-to-face communication, but on a practical idea level, at our church, we run a Wednesday night program for kids and students. And we're adding this year, once a month, doing a family meal for all of the families that come. Because we noticed that for a lot of our kids, they would show up with fast food, or they'd show up, like scarfing down things that they just got out of practice or just got out of whatever, and the parents are doing their very best just to get food in their kids' mouths before they show up at church. So we're like, why not eliminate that problem, and at least once a month give them a time to sit down together as a family and have dinner. And we would then have the opportunity to mingle with them and have face-to-face conversations.
Sure. Good.
We just said that to utilize whole church events as a means of connecting with those parents that otherwise you wouldn't be able to connect with if you say, hey, come, your kid's doing something, we need to give you information about it, but utilizing whole church events.
Good. That's cool.
You guys next?
I guess if I had to pick one thing, I would say establish a good relationship with the parents by having them participate in like the family meal thing, we talked about that, but maybe having the kids serve the parents, which would be nice because then they see that their children are human and more mature than they realize sometimes.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, how about you guys right here?
All right, we had equipping kids to build healthy relationships with parents, with good communication, forgiveness, respect, good values.
So again, equipping, that motif of training them to be able to do it. Huge.
Yeah.
Good.
Kind of the upside down of not equipping the parents, but equipping the kids.
With the parents.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. What you guys?
Yeah, just kind of sticking, with that equipping thing, shooting out like a monthly email or something like that, and then in that, let parents know what Pokemon Go is, what the latest, trends are in the youth culture that way, and hopefully be able to build that relationship to where when something does come up, a lot of those red or maybe yellow parents, and they're like, I don't know what to do. Well, we keep getting these things, maybe they know what to do, and then they'll be able to get them. So it's just...
Yeah, actually, and if you're like, I don't know how to write an email like that every single month, I don't know what else to say, I don't even know what is popular. A good resource for that is Orange. We spoke about that earlier. I mean, like, if you'll go to whatisorange.org, in their curriculum, their resources, all those things, they'll even pre-prepare a weekly email for you that you can just literally hit forward and send those kind of things, and adapt it to your own church. Our junior high ministry uses that quite a bit.
But let's also be honest. We also have, some of us have good mechanisms for this that we need to leverage, like social media. So for example, our children's ministry is phenomenal. They have their own, our children's ministry is called Next. They have their own Next page to where our children's ministry is always sending out, this is a great app, this is a great resource, this is something about this movie that's going on. So it's a way of equipping parents regularly. And so in your student ministry, you can leverage, again, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram for those resources pushing out. It doesn't always have to be, an email. Keeping in mind that people are bombarded, but they do scroll through their phones a lot. And you can get to that, and there are ways to do that. It's not as hard as you think to leverage that. The communication piece is huge.
And I would realize that most people don't read emails, and they have a hard time connecting with parents via voicemail.
Yeah.
So, through experience, setting up the parent queues through Orange, but also in that incorporating an aspect that's, if you like to receive information via text message, most people will see a text message like, immediately, but connecting the parents or informing parents via text message. There's a service called Easy Texting, and it's not free, you have to pay for credits, but in that email that you send out once a month or once a week, saying like, this is the curriculum that we'll talk about this week, here's a way that you can talk to your students. If you'd like to stay informed about weekly updates, sign up for this texting service, and then you definitely get the parents that want to be informed.
Sure.
They sign up for, so you're not just bombarding everybody with these text messages, but the text message is just an easy way to connect with parents and people don't read an email, but don't read their text.
And I hope everybody's listening. You're getting great ideas from you all. Like, you're saying really good things that if we did them would help. And And I think it's like it's really good for us to go, oh, I'll take a picture of that. Like, go buy the texting service he just said and use it. It'll help. Look, it's a really good way in a world where people don't want to read email, but they'll look at their phone and text. Leverage the stinking device. We can resist it and get mad and get frustrated, but it's where people live. Come off things all people say, I might reach all. It's the context that we're in, figure out how to leverage it. And you guys are saying, like, I'm sitting here going, hey Travis, I hope you're listening. Because like these are good ideas that we all need to figure out. And part of the reason when Travis and I were doing this is we said, it's just as important we learn from you as what we're putting back into you in front of you. And we're learning things. I'm learning things. This is helpful. This is really good. Go ahead, last week for this.
I guess along with that, we were really broad and said central to our ministry should be a strategy to connect with parents. So like I've talked for years about ideas of how to connect with parents, never actually implemented a strategy that our leaders are trained in how to implement or how to connect with parents. And so it's not just having a vision to connect with parents and partner with them, but actually having strategies in place. And whatever the strategy are, will change in context. But actually having a strategy.
Like for real doing it.
What I'm saying is,
right.
Yeah. And
for real saying
it's a huge part of what you do, not just a side piece.
Great.
Yeah. So one of the things, all of these phenomenal things, and some of you guys kind of alluded to this anyway. You can't really see it on here, but I'm going to also, when this is all said and done, I'm going to make these resources available. We're going to let you guys put your email in, and then we're going to send you all of our resources. Take them or don't, it doesn't matter, but we'll send them to you anyway. We created this year a parent commitment card. So basically, one thing we're going to require, we're going to do the same thing this year. We tried for a few years to encourage leaders to partner with parents, and a lot of times they're not that great at it. It's sometimes intimidating for a 23-year-old to reach out to a 54-year-old parent and go, I have all the answers for your kids. So it's really difficult. So one thing that we thought we would do was we would create a conversational touch point. So we created a card, and we're going to implement it this year. You can't really see it. But basically, we provide, problem solve, partner, and pray. And then at the very bottom, it's some fields that the leader will actually fill in themselves. It'll say, my name is, fill in your name, phone number, email, and then the best time to reach me is. And then this card, they're going to encourage these parents, to put this on their refrigerator so they'll have that leader's information, and they'll know that I'm committed to you as a parent to doing all these things. And the card itself is a conversational touch point. So if I tell a 23-year-old leader, I need you to go talk to that parent, they're going to go, I don't even know how I'm going to initiate that conversation. If I give them something to put in their hand and say, now you need to go take this and put it in that person's hand, that's the task that they have to get through in order to begin that conversation. And it's a jumping off point for that. We're requiring leaders to do that. And then there's one other way. We've said that every time that we've launched a group, we've done poorly. We've done really bad at this in the past, but we're trying to do a little bit better. But at the very beginning of every small group season, we want to invite parents over to those small groups, or if you're at a church and you're having a church, then at the beginning of your school year, spend 30 minutes at the beginning inviting parents. Do something creative, like have the students cook meals for their parents and serve them. And in that setting, hand them one of these types of cards. That is what we do, and we also realize that there are a lot of students that we have whose parents don't come to church. And so this is one of the ways that we can use the students, like you guys said, to bridge the gap to that generation, to bring their parents to church. Because if the parent knows that leader is on my side, and they've got my back when it comes to helping my kid, and that kid is in good hands when they're at that person's house and they're learning things. They may not agree with the Bible at all, but they're at that person's house and I know they're in good hands. It's going to change their heart, but they're not going to do it without some sort of a connection. And that is the bridge element when it comes to partnering with parents for us.
Yeah, and with that is just the mindset that there was a time, and some of you you've hinted at this or said it, there was a time where our culture was at a place where event-driven student ministry was a priority on people's minds, and their parents wanted to come and find out how to get involved in training. That day is gone, and it's more and more gone. And so the truth is you do have to chase them more than they're going to chase you. Yeah. This forces, listen to me, this forces us to be the goers rather than them to be the comers. It forces us in the student ministry to say, I will go find them, that parent, and talk to them. It was said in different ways, and we all feel it. We sent out emails, they didn't respond. We created the night, they didn't show up. We did the thing, they didn't want it. They don't care. They want little Billy to be dominant at soccer. They don't care. So there's a level where we have to, missiological, to reach the next generation, go pursue them more than they're going to come pursue us. This forces our leaders to be pursuers rather than receivers of the people who pursue us. Yeah?
Well, just to illustrate that, my youth pastor led a father to Christ, and I was intentional, made a phone call to this man, had dinner with him, and we've been meeting weekly ever since. And from about May to now, he has started engaging his son in meaningful communication. He's opened up the scripture and he's praying with his son. This is a brand new man in Christ.
Sure.
But it was intentional on my part. And
to pursue.
Yeah, but, you know, and we're talking about big picture. How do you deal with it? One bite at a time?
Yeah, sure.
And so you got to build up one-on-one relationship. And he's taking what he's learning and then progressively establishing trust with his 17-year-old son and building there.
That's good. And you guys, you said this, right? Like face-to-face communication, and then you talked about making sure that as you do this, you're figuring out ways to kind of hold them accountable to that. This is where you're saying to your youth staff, if you're going to be on youth staff at our church, this is what you're going to do. If you don't want to do this, you're not going to be on youth staff at our church. So you're going to have to do this. And you're like, well, I'll never have your youth staff. Well, let me just say this. I would rather have you have like 4 great youth staff workers than 9 crappy ones. Because you're going to get what you're putting into it. So you've got to raise the bar on those men and women to go after that. And so, again, in a culture where people don't want to show up, how do you go to them? And this helps us to bridge that. All right, same exercise. We'll leave this up for 30-ish seconds, and then Travis tells us about the number 3.
All right, so the third thing is, we talked this morning about serving and how important it is to have students own the church, but we're in a generation that kids are, they want to be great at soccer. There's very little margin in their life. So what do you do in a culture where kids aren't owning the church the reason they should be? Not just the student ministry, but the church in general. What are we doing to cultivate that around our church to help students own the local church? We have a problem in most churches where we're trying to build 2 different churches. We're trying to build a church for you until you're 18 years old, and then we're trying to build a church for the people who are 19 and above. There's 2 different churches. We're trying to build one church. I was talking to you this morning about the word youth group and how we've tried to obliterate that from our language, because youth group tends to be an idea that we're one together, we are one church, but or a youth is its own church in its own way. We're trying to obliterate that whole idea. We're trying to create one church. But what do you do in a culture where we don't have kids that own the church? How do you create that culture where they can be owners and not renters?
So again, lack of student ownership in a culture where my one friend used to say, you know, the stats say this, that faithful attenders in North America used to come 4.5 or 5 times a weekend. Now, if a person shows up 1.8 times, gives $4,000 a year in volunteers, they're an all-star, which is tragic. But that's just kind of where we are as a culture. Yeah. As a result, mom and dad are not there, which means Billy's not normally there, Susie's not there. So there's a lack of ownership. How do we figure out how to get those students to want to own it in a culture where they're not being challenged, maybe even at home to own it? Or that the church hasn't figured out how to help them own it. So we want students to feel like this matters, the church matters, the church matters. How do we help create ownership to pass it on so that they don't feel like we're babysitting them until they're 18 or whatever pacifying time? How do we help bridge the idea of ownership in the local church? 5 minutes, go. We're only going to go to 4 groups this time for the sake of time to keep going through. So 4 groups.
Why don't we go these middle groups over here? So we'll start with you guys.
Basically, we came up with the one favorite would be assign students tasks within ownership. You know, it could be just practically as small as providing a snack at a group up to leading the group for one time or something. You can trust them to do that.
Okay. Assign tasks.
Then ownership playing, when you ask them to volunteer, not
very rarely are all students jumping out and volunteering, so that's fine.
Okay?
Yeah.
Good?
All right, how about Tyler over here?
Discover and implementing. So find out what their talent and gift is. So if there's students that like audio or they do lights, get them involved and give them ownership and explain to them, these are important in our ministry. We want you to be involved so that they have a sense of, I need to be there to help out. I'm valued and I'm important. And I feel that my voice is actually heard.
Okay. I want you to filter what he just said through what we talked about this morning, because putting these two together is huge. So a lot of times we do this and we say, little Johnny, you love tech, why don't you come run the slides for our student ministry night? What if you were equipping high school Johnny to be able to run Pro Presenter for your entire church? Here's what I'm saying. What happens when Johnny, who's 16, figures out how to own the things for the big church, for what's really going on? You're not only saying you had value in the room with your peers, you have value in the entire body of Christ in our church. And so I would say it's not just discover their talent and implement that within your student ministry. It's back to what we said. Remember, one of the 5 things we said to do to try to bridge the gap was get them to serve. Get them to serve in your whole church. Do you have any idea how valuable the 17-year-old guitar player feels when he's playing for the whole church or she's playing for the whole church? That's incredible. So we have amazingly talented people in our church, and we relegate them to go hang out with their peers and never value them above that. So what he just said is brilliant, especially if we can figure out, now you're a lead pastor going, I don't want to do that because then they're going to bring their opinions in and their opinion's going to mess up, middle-aged Mikey, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Well, then middle-aged Mikey has a problem. And leaders have a problem. So we need to be willing to say middle-aged Mikey has to hear what Tommy Teenager says. I'm just making these up as I go.
Write it down, write it down.
I'm having fun. All right, great. 2 more.
All right, 2 more. Let's go group in the back.
Us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we talked about lots of things, but I guess I'll just pick one. One of the things we talked about was we get our youth here. Our church is really small. We brought a group of 21 of them. And
here meaning momentum.
Momentum. And
Okay.
last year it sparked a ton of things in our youth. They started a worship band after leaving here, which our church has not had a youth worship band. They started a fellowship of Christian students at the junior high. And, like we learned, they spoke about, what's their arc. So in our youth group time, we're talking about, so what's your arc? What is God, what's he speaking to you about? And then as youth leaders, how can we help you?
Yeah.
Build that arc.
Yeah. So get them around a great, strong, I wrote shared experience they like. For example, momentum is a great one that has vision and such. That's great. It's awesome. One more.
Yep, you guys back here.
We said that, giving them ownership by having them invest in something, but also casting a vision to them of how important that role is.
Yeah.
Like for us, we're a portable church, so setting up chairs is not something everybody wants to do. So you recruit students to do it and say, if we didn't set up these chairs, where would anybody sit? That's like how important this role is. So how menial it could be, cast a vision for it, and they take ownership of it, and then it goes from there.
It's great.
Super huge.
Go ahead, Travis, and say the
Yeah, so, for us, we just like to think of ownership or mentorship with the idea of ownership. So we like, if you heard us talk about this earlier, we try our best to connect as many students to leaders and mentors as possible. And we put it on our student leaders to connect those students to serving opportunities. We tell our leaders all the time, you've got to make sure that your kids are serving in our church. You got to make sure, because it's a relational connection. If a kid can learn from a 23-year-old how cool it is to serve at church, they're much more likely to do it than if their mom tells them to do it. It's relational. It's a relational base that they have with their leader. And we infuse that into our leaders. And we think that whatever your student ministry model is, whether it's that you're the youth pastor and you're the only one working and you've got a couple parents that are with you, whatever it is, you've got to infuse that from the top down, and it's got to be relational.
So with that, again, it's just your mentors, your group leaders, your ministry staff need to know that part of their responsibility is to connect them to serving. Not just to pour into them, but to pour into them in a way where they're helping them own the church. So as a small group leader of high school seniors, I take time in my small group at times and say, who's serving? or I thank them for serving, or I celebrate the ones that are serving, so that they have a vision for that. And then the other one that we won't write up here that we said earlier is it's a lot easier for your students to own something they like, so create weekend services that they'll attend and they want to be at. This comes back to one of the points we brought up this morning about creating a church where the next generation really wants to be there. So create it in such a way that they have ownership because they're going to invest and own what they feel connected to. All right, same drill. We'll leave this up 30 seconds. Number 4.
Yeah, so number 4 is, what does your discipleship model look like? We talked about how the event-driven culture is gone, and mentorship, discipleship, those things are so crucial. But a lot of times we can just we can punt and just hope that these kids are being discipled somewhere, hope that our student leaders are doing it, hope that their parents are doing it at home. But when it comes down to it, we're responsible for shepherding each and every one of our kids. And so what does that look like for us? How are we carrying that out? Because if this generation doesn't carry the flag for Christianity into the future, into the next generation, then we've lost. So what does that look like for us? What are the programs that we're using? What are some ideas that we all can share with each other as far as it comes to student discipleship?
Yeah, again, you're creating a discipleship model, keeping in mind the culture we're in and bringing it to the next generation. Go.
This time what we're going to do is I'm going to pick a few groups that didn't talk last time just for the interest of time. So why don't we start, Heidi, why don't we start with you back there? Telling you about
Equipping equippers is kind of the thought, which is again, we were talking about a different model. One is maybe in a small group, but really one-on-one, which is a slower process, but it has the long-term value. The investment into one-on-one.
Sure. Yeah, and again, as we talked this morning, our heart is to try to distill it down to get your 12, get your disciples, and then get it to your Peter, James, and John, and even out of your Peter, James, and John. Get it down to your John, or get it down to where it's with Peter, it's with James, or it's with John individually. So figuring out a way to make sure that those people are hungry to do that is crucial.
Yeah, let's go to you guys right here.
We didn't really think so. I don't know. Can we just go for it?
Go, Andrew.
We didn't really talk about any of this. I think, I guess the students I'm working with, I think our discipleship model has to be built on listening and hearing. We're really good at building discipleship models that are telling.
Yeah.
And there's an importance in teaching and lecturing and sermon and stuff, but if we're not listening and we're not really knowing where people need to be discipled, what they can be discipled in, and so it's a lot of times we'll end up here. So the model, I think, needs to shift to one that's more based on listening.
Sure.
That's good.
Good.
Yeah. Very good. But you guys?
We discussed that there has to be some sort of, I guess it's equipping, like the leaders, making sure the leaders, there's a training that they know how to disciple. But it's also meeting the students where they're at, like whatever the students are interested in, like that's where you're going to go to disciple. You have a common ground. We need an example of a particular student likes working in cars. Well, we're going to fix cars. So you're just meeting the students where they're at.
Yeah, and I think that dovetails well with what Andrew said, which is, I think there's got to be this balance of, hey, let me sit down and let's have a Bible study versus let me sit down and be in your world.
Yeah.
And being in your world, part of that is listening. It's engaging what they love. It's hearing from them. It's giving them permission to speak freely. It's allowing them to express their doubts. It's all that kind of stuff. As we were talking about this, just to kind of cut to the end, Travis and I were talking about how what this is really built on is that you have, for lack of a better word, tenacious, trained, mentors. That they're just hungry and ready to go be in the lives of people. And I think Andrew's call out volley on that for a while about this idea of let's not just download information if we don't have a relationship well is really important. Especially to a generation, depending on who they are, who can sense the agenda. They're smart enough to do that. But I do think that we have to really make sure that this word and this word are both true. This has come up several times today, guys, in the conversation of training. And it's the thing that we all balk at because it's hard work. It's just hard work. We have to get in front of people. We have the same problem with adult training. Like adult small groups. It's hard to train them. It's hard to get them in front of them and to create it. And then this expectation, I think. But I think here's what I said, and why shouldn't it shock us, right? What we're saying is ultimately, the best way to reach and minister to the next generation is to do what Jesus did and get in front of them life on life. Right? It's just it's not rocket science, but it's the irony is we keep trying to do something different. And so we've got to figure out a way to do this, but I think this call out on this idea of listening and engagement is really important.
Let's just do one more. We'll go, Sandy, we'll go your group in the back.
We talked about the idea of discipling one-on-one with students, but having students disciple each other. There's a model that Neil Cole developed called Life Transformation Group, where you gather together once a week for an hour. You read a large volume of scripture, we'll say 20 chapters. You have 10 accountability questions you ask each other, and you pray for lost people. And if you didn't read that week, you do it all over again the next week if someone didn't read it. So you could be reading the same 20 chapters for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So you're learning scripture, you're keeping each other accountable, and you're praying for lost people.
LTGs, again, stands for Life Transformation Groups. Life Transformation Groups. Neil has a great resource out. They have a little card you can print out, keep your Bible with you. I was in an LTG for about 4 years myself with a couple other guys. And it forces scripture, forces you to keep your fishing list of what you're thinking about, forces you to stay accountable. And that's a good model to drive the conversation. I think the thing with an LTG is it's got to be with someone you have a relationship with. It's not going to work with someone who you haven't built some type of foundation with. And so come back to some of this stuff.
One of the resources that we use for our entire church now, we started using it about a year ago for student ministry, and now our entire church uses it, is a book called Board Chair Discipling by Dan Spader. I don't know if you've read this book, if you're familiar with it or not. Very, very easy read. You can probably fire through it in a couple of days. But this book is phenomenal. We give all of our leaders this, and it's basically a discipleship path, and it's a discipleship strategy. We use this for all of our students. We actually incorporated it into our student leader manual. It's a way for you to check the barometer of where students, and where anybody, it's not just students, but you can check the barometer for where you are as a follower of Jesus. So I would highly encourage you to get a copy of this book and see if it makes sense for your own ministry.
And with that, again, like if you were to go hire a personal trainer, the first thing they're going to do is assess where you're at before they decide how they're going to take the process forward. And I think sometimes we take a one-size-fits-all approach to the way we're going to interact with students, rather than evaluating where they're at, what their background is, what their openness is, what their receptivity is, all that kind of stuff. And so we're just going to give you number 5 because I think it's an interesting thought. We need to get ready to kind of land the plane. But go ahead and tell them kind of the concept for number 5.
The concept for number 5 is sometimes this one can strike a chord in many of our hearts, but it's that feeling like your student ministry is JV or the WNBA. It's not. It's basically looked at.
We'll stick with JV so Travis doesn't get sassy.
There we go. That's right. But it's feeling like your student ministry or your youth group, whatever you call it, is viewed by the leadership of your church, by the church as a whole, as something that you guys are just having your own little kiddie land over there, and ping pong and pizza party, have fun with that. And you're not seen as a legit ministry by the leadership or maybe the elders or maybe the congregation of your church. And what we need to all realize is that student ministry, or what our leadership needs to realize, is that student ministry is one of the most significant ministries in our church because it is absolutely fostering the next generation. And so a lot of that's exactly what the bridge is about in a nutshell. It's bridging the gap between the senior leadership and the youth pastors. We talked quite a bit about that today, about having those conversations between and some of us need to just go home and have these tough conversations with our senior pastors or with the appropriate people. These are tough conversations that need to be had in order for you to build that relationship.
I know that excellence can get sort of that's just the barometer of business or marketing or whatever, but here's what I would say to you. If you're doing something in your student ministry that a non-Christian would look at and say, that's not done well, you need to change it. And I don't even necessarily mean they agree with the content. They would look at the environment that you've created. So for example, Christian or non-Christian, if you were coming over to my house for dinner, I'd clean up my house. And I would make sure there's toilet paper and stuff to drink. And I think a lot of times we approach student ministry, it becomes JV because we treat it JV with the resources we give and the willing criticism. So here's what I would say. If you're a student ministry leader, you need to listen if other people are saying what you're doing is not good. You listen. You need to be humble enough to go, maybe we're not putting everything we need to put in it. And on the other side, if you're a senior pastor, don't expect them, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken crap, one of my friends used to tell me. People have to have the resources to be able to make what you want them to make. So sometimes your student ministry guy goes, you want me to make something great and you don't resource it. It's not fair. You can't hold me accountable for a lousy thing when you have the resource and you have a chance. So on both sides, we would just say, if your student ministry is JV, maybe you need to look at yourself as a youth pastor, maybe as a lead pastor or staff member, you need to look at, are you resourcing them? But I would just filter it through, I have 4 kids, and my kids, even though the oldest is 10, about to turn 11, he's marketed to by a world that tells him this is the quality of what you're supposed to have in your life. And when we as Christians do not market with that level of creativity and effectiveness, we are sending our kids a message that church can be junior varsity. And that's ridiculous. We serve the creator of creation. We serve the one who made us in his image, who can help us do things well. We should figure that out. All right, I'm going to flip the script completely. If you get a picture of this, those 5, I think we all would agree, really good ideas to think about how to bridge those. And now what I'm going to kind of leave us with, and then Travis will do the drawing for those folks that qualified and made sense for that. I'm going to leave you with 5 things that our church is saying, we got to figure out how to solve these. You're probably going to agree, you got to figure out how to solve them. Our brothers that are in the room who are from Canada have already had to wrestle with some of this stuff, even at a faster pace than those of us in the States have, but it certainly is real. And people in Western Europe have had to deal with these things, but they're certainly real for us as we move forward. I referenced earlier a book that has helped shape some of our thinking on this. I'll tell you that book again, Good Faith, How to Live Out Your Faith When You're Seen as Extreme and Irrelevant by Dave Kidman and Gabe Lyons. Phenomenal book. Highly recommend that you read it. It'll help frame some of this conversation that we're having. But here is some 5 things we're going to have to figure out how to bridge the next generation as a result of what's going on in our context. Number 1 is the ongoing, just overall hostility to Christianity. We're going to have to figure out how to reach the next generation in a culture that overall is becoming more hostile to Christianity. So if you are a freshman in college and you show up on the campus of The Ohio State University and you say you believe homosexuality is wrong, you have painted yourself in a pretty interesting box. And you are seen as hateful and irrelevant and extreme and et cetera, and depending on the conversation. And so there's hostility to Christianity that's existing. Now, for every one of the things that I'm going to say as a negative, there are also real positives. And here's a giant positive that I'll just say. Some of us won't like to hear it. This is beautiful in America because it's going to clean and beat up nominalism. People in 20, 30 years will quit calling themselves Christians if they're really not, because it's not going to be helpful for them. This has already happened in Western Europe, probably happened to a great degree in Canada. It's going to happen in the States. It's going to be to the point where people aren't going to say, I love Jesus because I like our songs and I like our youth groups. People are going to go, I don't want to have anything to do with that with weirdos. Christianity is becoming more and more hostile, and that's problematic for us in terms of us trying to get our message out. The book that I was referencing and other books are addressing this issue, and some of us were at a conference last week where we were talking about being pushed to the margins of culture and society. And what do we do as we continue to have hostility to Christianity in our culture? With this and related to this is the issue of biblical literacy. I've given this talk like 25 times and I still can't spell literacy, which is not helpful. Biblical literacy. You are living in a culture where more and more people not only don't know who Moses and Abraham are, they don't care. And pretty soon they're going to get to the point where they've never heard and talked about who Jesus is. And we have to have conversations that, listen to me, quit making assumptions about what people agree with and what people know. And it should affect our preaching, it should affect our evangelism, it should affect our starting points. Now, some people argue this is terrible and it's bad. There was an ongoing dialogue for years that they were writing and talking about between between Mark Driscoll when he was in Seattle and Matt Chandler when he was in Dallas. And they were arguing about which is easier to do ministry in, a context like Seattle that's not really Christian, or a context like Dallas where it's the buckle of the Bible Belt. And what Chandler argued, and I think it's an interesting argument, he said, I would rather have your problem, Mark, because you're starting with a fresh slate without any misconceived notions of people who have been inoculated with enough of Jesus to think they're fine. I think the good news for us is we're going to be able to go back to the basics and actually build on clean slates. But it's going to force us to go back to the basics and make sure we're actually doing that as we go forward. Here's the third thing. This is huge. I referenced this earlier. The irrelevance of the local church. We don't have to like it. It's just true, guys. It's becoming less and less where people want to go and less valuable. Jeff Bogue always refers to the future of the local church in America as a lot like a moose lodge. You think about the moose lodge in your community, you're not really sure what goes on, and to be honest, you don't care. Maybe they play bingo, and maybe they drink, maybe they have silent options. I don't know. But the truth is, most of us don't drive by our moose lodges and go, I wonder what's going on with the moose lodge. Most of us don't even pay attention, and that's where the local church is heading in America. I gave the stat earlier where 40% is slowly shrinking by 1% every single year. We're going to have to figure this out, and one of the places that this is going to affect us in a major way is in evangelism, because evangelism for a long time has been event-driven, and what this is going to force us to do is to magnify the importance of the priesthood of believers versus events. Because the truth is, we're going to have to go rather than they're going to come. We're going to have to switch our evangelism strategy in a major way. Let me give you a real pragmatic way this has affected our church. So our church has outgrown its buildings, multi-site, moved on, outgrown our main campus. Will probably be stacked again in the fall as we move to it. The next dollar sign for us to be able to build what we would need to build to satisfy what we're already doing. We have 4 services there right now, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. For us to build what we probably need to build to be able to hold everybody, the next dollar sticker on that is $9 million. $9 million to be able to build what we need to handle all of the childcare, all of the parking, and all of the adult ministry space. And we've made the decision to not do it. And you know why we've made it? Because we know this is happening. And we're not going to invest in the monumental structure that in 30 years will not matter. There is a very real understanding we have to have about this, that as America becomes more and more post-Christian, we have to understand the local church is not where they're going to land for a long, long time. We're going to have to go. It's going to shift from event. There was a time where, you guys remember this, we could put Billy Graham in an auditorium and it would fill up and people would come. We could bring a quartet in and people would listen. We could create an event and bring some ministry from college and they'd come and then people would show up and everything. It's not happening anymore. They don't care. So we're going to have to figure out the relevance of the local church. These 3 make a lot of sense off the bat. The next 2 could be a little bit different, but it's a constant, strong need, rephrase it, I'm going to write this, a strong need for mentorship. And the primary reason we put this in this category is because the family is dying. In our context, family used to be a value that mattered and was significant. It doesn't anymore. More and more split homes, more and more broken homes, less time with parents, dual income parents working, more and more busyness, issues with the Legos of time, etc., etc. Well, the reality is because family is dying, kids are actually being developed in a culture where not only do they not know about Jesus, they don't even have life skills. And there's 2 places where they're already seeing this and having to address it. One is in the military and one is in a business world, where they've had to change their strategy of realizing people who are 22 aren't showing up with the same 22-year-old life skills that the person 30 years ago showed up with. So we have to figure out as a church to say we have an amazing open door with people if we'll be intentional to go pursue mentorship with them. And then the last one I'm going to highlight on is reflective of a bigger issue in society. And we're just going to call it the social media epidemic. And this affects a lot of things, okay? It affects the issue of globalization. It affects the issue of individualism. And it affects the issue of information. And then all of that is affected in how people do relationship. I'll highlight those, put a bow on this. So here's the deal. You have people in your church right now who actually, while you're preaching, they're fact-finding your message. They're Googling stuff. They're just doing research. You also have an issue of everybody and their brother who's under 25 now thinks they're a photographer or a writer. Instagram's turned everybody into a great photographer, and every blog has made everybody a great author, which is not true, but we've bought into it. And here's the deal. 30 years ago, to say something, you had to go to journalism school to be able to say it. Now you can say whatever you want in 140 characters, which is awesome and terrifying. It's incredible, but dangerous. You also have people that have grown up in Muslim cultures where suddenly they realize when the internet showed up that not everybody dressed in a head covering. And that was like, holy cow, there are other people in the world doing different things. And these three things have created incredible shrinking of our world. And it's also affected the way we do relationships. So you have students in your youth ministry who have dated a girl and broken up with a girl they never hung out with in person. It was completely over text. You have armed your 16-year-old with the gun to be able to send nude pictures to their girlfriend. Created a completely different culture with technology. This has changed ministry. I am aware of things in my church I would not have been aware of 40 years ago. And I don't know what to do about it sometimes. It creates incredible difficulty with this. And so you have this social media epidemic that is all shaping sort of the way we relate to each other as humanity. And we got to figure that out. I look at these and I go, if a church, hear my heart on this and we'll pray and be done. After he does the drawing, I'll pray and then he'll do the drawing. These 5 things, if your church doesn't figure it out, will not bridge to the next generation, period. And if we don't figure it out as the U.S., we won't bridge to the next generation. This is the future of the problems we have to solve. And some of us want to bury our heads in the sand and say, let's get back to the way the USA was. That ship has sailed. It ain't coming back. I don't care who gets in the White House. It's not coming back.
Right.
We're going to have to figure out how to be more apostolic missionaries who seek now. I want to bang my head through a wall every time I hear, is it missional or attractional? I would say it's and. Let's figure out how to be missional and land them in attractional places. Let's how to be attractional while we're being missional. But here's what I'm going to tell you. This is going to flip the script solving these 5 things on how we operate as a church going forward. And as much as that can be scary and doom and gloom, listen to me, brothers and sisters, I think it's an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible opportunity because it is going to weed out people who really don't want Jesus, and the people who do want Jesus are going to surface, and we're going to have to get hungry to go after it. So really the way Travis and I wanted to wrap this up was to say, hey, go and have fun. Figure these out. And also to say, let's figure them out together, and if we get some good solutions, let's talk. Because this is hard. I mean, I'm sitting here going, if my church doesn't figure some of these things out, the future is just not healthy, it's not good, it's bleak. And again, some of our brothers who are in Western Europe, in Canada, in non-church places, they're already been fighting this battle for years. And it's where we're headed, and it's what's going on. Again, the book I referenced earlier helps drive at some of these thoughts and help us think about some of this stuff. Does everybody see these? Is this a crazy list? Or does it make sense? Pretty fair? And so I just say, if we're going to bridge, let's figure out how to do this. Let me pray, Travis. Yeah, real quick, yeah.
Pete, what was that book you mentioned? Could you mention it again, please?
Yeah, Good Faith. Good Faith, and I think it's How to Live When People Think You're Extreme and Irrelevant. Gabe Lyons and Dave Kinnaman. Gabe Lyons and Dave Kinnaman. And again, they're part of a group that's a phenomenal research group called Q Network. Their stuff's awesome. Really, really good.
And if you guys on your way out, we're going to have a computer available that you can type in your name and email address. And when we get that, I'm going to go downstairs and grab a cup of coffee, and I'm going to email out everyone that puts their name in all of the resources that we've come up with today and from our church, and also links to where you can buy those books as well.
Guys, thanks for your time. Let me pray for us. And then again, Travis will do the drawing for those of you that thought for that. God, we know in our hearts that you're going to build your church throughout the world, and we have confidence in that, so we don't panic in that. But we love the people that we love in our world, that are our friends and our neighbors and our colleagues and our students, and we want to reach the next generation, God. We want to be a part of that. And so God, help us know how to make the most out of every opportunity. Help us to be on mission, to be disciplers. Help us to look at our methods and see the scriptures. Help us to navigate our problems. Help us to be honest. Help us to be effective. Give us humility when we're not. Teach us where we need to be taught. Forgive us where we need to be forgiven. But God, in the end, I really believe that the people in this room want your name to be famous. So help us figure out how to do that for not just now, but for the future. And so teach us as individual churches what you need to teach us. And we pray this in the name of Jesus.